Hello, this is Terry from Fabric Junction. Today we're going to do a binding with a piping finish. Here is the look we're going to achieve on our product. Here is our binding. Here, the black on this one gives us that piping look. To accomplish that, you need to cut 2 strips that you will use as a binding. The yellow is my binding. It's the smaller one, so you'll cut that 1.5 inches. The black will serve as my piping. It needs to be 2 inches. I know that seems backwards, but it works. So remember that your binding is 1.5 inches and the piping piece is 2 inches. You will make your long strip, whatever you need. I'm just showing you a short version for time. But put your 2 pieces together and sew lengthwise using a 1/4 inch seam. Now the next most important part on this particular technique is the pressing. No matter what color you have, you need to press that seam allowance towards the binding. So in this case, the seam allowance has to be pressed towards the black. And the reason I do that is so that that seam allowance is inside here and creates a little more stability to the piping. And it's out of my road when I actually do the finished stitching. So press towards the piping and then press in half. Now I discovered when I press in half, even though I try to stay lined up nice, once in a while one side or the other will shift. I go back and I try to press it and it may still shift, or let's say it presses and you have a little gap. I pull those together when I am actually doing my stitching. But my first goal is to get it pressed so that it stays exactly where I want it. If it doesn't, like I said, I correct it when I do my stitching. So once you have your binding together, in essence, this is what it'll look like. You have your black, it'll fold over. Here's the part that is your piping. Now for time, I have already started putting the binding on. And I started here, leaving a nice tail. You put your piping color down, and as you can see, we're working from the back side. You put your piping color, or your binding color down. You're going to stitch to where you actually see your piping. And I stopped just before the last corner so I can turn a corner. And we do that same way as we generally turn a corner. The same technique. We come into the corner. Stop about a 1/4 inch. If you don't know exactly where that 1/4 inch is, go ahead and mark it. There's nothing wrong with that. But after you've been binding for a long time, you have a pretty good idea. And you can see with my thread, once I got to my 1/4 inch, I sewed off at an angle. What I do next is, I always say, go to the right and then go north, south, and we want to line up this corner so that the top of it runs exactly across and the side is nice and straight. We don't want the side poking out like it was there, tuck it in. So we want this to be very square, and we want it to line up here and here. And once you have it lined up, mine moved just a little bit in the shifting, so I'll line her back up again. And then we sew. And I'm using a 1/4 inch seam. And as you can see on this particular one, when I press stitch, you can see a little more of the yellow one to poke out. As I get there, I just roll those two together because I do want that to line up. So I sew, stopping early enough to do my finish. And I need my ruler that I forgot to grab. Because what we need to do is you need to measure this across. Let me grab a ruler. I need to have that finished measurement. And in this case, it measures 3 inches. So I lay this down. I place my ruler at 3 inches. Here's the 3 inches right at this edge. And there, so I have it overlapped 3 inches. I lay this one on the top and I fold it at 3 inches. I fold it back and cut. I open up one, I come across with the second one, and I know that's not going to work because the yellow should match up. So let's see. I have to remember how to do this. Give it the little twist. There. I think I have it. So if I think I have it, I always test run. So on the binding, I slip in 2 pins. Just in the direction I'm going to sew, I open it up and go, okay, is that correct? And is it going to lay correct? And if it lays correct, as you can see it does, I know I connected them correct. So the top one was turned upward and the bottom one was opened up and laid. Now the part here is you want to cross this little intersection between the yellow and the black so that your piping will match nicely. So I know which direction I'm going to sew. My pins tell me that. I start in the corner. The first thing I do is I aim for that little intersection, and I can see it. So I aim for that intersection, and then for the corner. Once again, before I cut, I double check. Yep, I have it. It wants to lay. Now I trim away the extra. Back to my machine, and I'm going to do just a little finger press. I do like that to stay open. It creates less bulk. I checked to make sure that I was kind of matching. And now I finish sewing the binding in place. So now my binding is all attached. Now to do the last of it and turning the corner. So now that I have my binding all on, I roll it to the front. I line up where I'm going to stitch in the ditch. I line that up with my seam. And now I'm going to get a little closer to the corner so I can show you how to turn a corner. Anyway, I line up, and now I want to stitch in the ditch. So I need to make sure that my needle is going to line up exactly between the black and the yellow. So I stitch in the ditch. To turn the corner, we turn it with, I use my tweezers a lot when I turn corners. It's easier for me to hang on to. And the back side wants to turn for you. There is a kind of little miter that's already built in, but I use my tweezer to get in nice and close, and then as I get closer, I pinch it and turn, and now I can actually line up the piping section with here, and to get this to look nice at a nice right angle. So I stitch until I've caught the other direction. I leave the needle down. Again, I line up, put my foot down, and because there's quite a bit of bulk there, I still use my tweezer to kind of help it through, and then continue stitching all the way around to the end. And when you're done, you have created this wonderful piping look to finish off your project. Thank you for watching.